and welcome. Welcome to the kickoff for the 49-day training, where we hope you get a new frame on time. We're going to play with time. And if some of you may have heard me say this week, we can virtually guarantee you'll come away with a different sense of time, how to use it, play with it, be it, whatever. Let's start with just, I'm going to just speak for a few minutes here and ask you a few questions, and then we're going to open it up for your questions as well as some questions I have for you. So this is mostly a discussion, not a lecture, but I do want to frame it with a few comments. First, from a physics perspective, what is time? We think when we have a word for something that we understand it, but time isn't a thing. So there has never been a physics experiment to detect the flow of time, or that has been able to detect the flow of time. Time doesn't flow. Time doesn't flow. It's always now. I bet you've noticed that. When you really look at it, I bet you'd notice that. From a Zen perspective, we would say that we have a concept of like a fixed self, you moving through time, but it's actually exactly the other way around. Flip that on its head. It's more like here you are in the eternal now, constantly changing as things interact with you, right? Everything arises out of relationship, including you and me. And the simplest molecule, the simplest little subatomic particle, it arises out of relationship, out of resonance. And in that resonance, there's interaction, and in interaction, there's change. And in order to talk about change, we need a concept we call time, because not all forms change at the same rate. So as soon as you say rate, you imply time. Time is a convention for talking about change. We have a sense of it flowing because of how our head works. We're smart human beings, and we have memory and we have imagination. I understand that goldfish only have 10 seconds of memory, but you and I have a lot more than that. We can remember long, long ago, and even in our bodies, we store things. Even ancestral trauma gets stored, right? So we are a walking library of memories, right? So for us, time has this sense of continuity because of how our brain works, how we work. And that means we have a psychological relationship to time. So let me just ask if we can come on gallery view for a minute, so that I can see all your hands. And I'd invite you to come on screens, and I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm just going to frame up some ideas of different psychological relationships we have to time. And I just want you to raise your hand if that's something you've told yourself. You can raise both hands if it's something you tell yourself often, okay? And I'd suggest use your actual physical hand rather than the little reaction hand, because those reaction hands take too long. They take too much time. So we're going to use your real hand. All right, here we go. If you've said this to yourself, I want you to raise your hand. I don't have enough time. Okay. I like to be on time. Oh, there we go. I have so much to do. Ah, right. I like to take my time. Yeah, okay. Time often gets away from me. Okay. There's never enough time. Ah, there you go. There's a time for everything. Yeah, okay. I'm good at managing time. I'm bad at managing time. It's okay. Do you see what I mean? These are all psychological relationships with this thing we call time. And we often feel like time, because of the way our head works, and I want to distinguish our head from our mind. We have a brain, that is a sense organ, and it produces thoughts. That's its job, and it's really good at it. But mind is much bigger than just our brain. Because of the way these habits of thought get into our body, we have a habitual way of working with time. So as Ryan Roshi said, last year we worked about habit. This year we're working on one of the most entrenched habits we've got, which is our connection with time, and how we live our lives as a result of that, how life feels as a result of it. Is it a race that we always feel one step behind? Does it feel like a cram job where we're just stuffing as much into time as we possibly can? Does it feel like a joyful adventure? That's our choice. That's our choice. And we invite you into playing with how you can be freer and how you make that choice over these next 49 days. No one can make that choice for you. It's your choice. And because we're talking about a psychological relationship and not some kind of absolute thing, you can make a different psychological relationship. And because that your current relationship is embedded in your body, it doesn't change overnight. It changes with practice, hence 49 days. So we also are talking about energy in this session. What's the relationship between time and energy? From a physics point of view, when something changes really fast, we say it has a lot of energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of movement. So if something moves really quickly, high energy. If it kind of moves slowly, it's low energy. So light is a higher energy signal than sound, and it can change more quickly. But energy, as we experience it subjectively, is tricky stuff. You know yourself that sometimes you have days where you have high energy or good energy or lots of energy, and some days where you feel depleted or exhausted, right? And you know those two experiences feel different. You know that on the days when you feel depleted and exhausted, things take more effort. There's more efforting in stuff. And they seem to, well, I'll speak for myself. When I feel exhausted, things take more time. I'm more distracted, easily pulled off, and there's almost a kind of lethargy hanging, that energy seems to infiltrate what I'm doing. Versus when I feel lots of energy, then what I can do is penetrating, focused, boom, right there. So why would we always want lots of energy, right? The challenge is that, again, in part because of our psychological relationship, not only to time, but to all of our lived experience, we can store a lot of ways that, in a way, energy gets trapped in us, or it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow. It's almost like, picture bubble wrap. Can you picture bubble wrap? I actually have some bubble wrap over there I could use as a prop, but you know how bubble wrap, it's all these little pocket. That's how we feel. Or that's kind of what happens when energy sort of gets stuck in puddles in us. And that's why we also encourage you in these 49 days to do something that gets energy flowing. And what are those things? They're often physical, and they're often things you love to do. I loved Scobie Roshi's line, that makes your heart sing. I like that. Like singing, but something that's getting energy flowing, moving through your body rather than bubble wrap body, so that you can feel this sense of having it to give. So let me just try a little experiment with you, just a quick little experiment of how energy can be available to you in sort of mysterious ways. And I would say for this, if you're able to stand up, it would be better. And I'm going to stand up with you. I'm going to just do some simple movement. Take this at your own pace or your own capacity. Don't overdo it. But I want you to we want to just do some simple movement to get energy moving. So I want to just start from this state and feel into your state right now, because I'm going to ask you for a before and after comparison. Okay, so just feel into your state here. All right. And I want you to feel your feet in the earth. The earth, a great source of energy. We come from the earth, but we often forget it and feel deeply, disconnected from it. So right now, I want you to soften the bottoms of your feet, or if you have shoes on, even kick them off. Soften the bottoms of your feet so they can actually sink into the earth. Just feel the roots growing through your feet into the earth. Just feel resourced by that earth, okay? And feel how energy could flow up or down. You could send energy down into the earth, which we often do on an exhale. You could draw energy up from the earth. Down from the earth, up from the earth. And what I'd like you to do is just start moving around your own center, using your feet to control the movement. So as I turn to one side, my one knee is bending a little more, the other side, the other knee, and my arms are like ropes. My arms are not doing the work. It's all coming from here. But because my arms are relaxed, they're going with the centrifugal movement. And now let the feet really plug into the earth and get it going. At any speed that your body is comfortable with, it doesn't matter the speed, just feel into what's going on. Yeah, that's good. Keep going, any speed you want. If you want to pick it up, you can try that experiment, or just keep it nice and slow, that's fine. Just feel that earth's energy coming up through your legs, moving your hips, your arms, or ropes, hands together. And just shake the hands, shake the hands. And then shake the hands apart. Shoulders up and down, shake it down. And stop. Check it out. What's the felt sense in your body? Felt sense. Come on back. And let me check in with you. Clearly, we spent some energy doing that. That wasn't free. Took some of our breakfast. Okay. But how many of you feel more energized just doing a simple activity like that? Yeah. So that's what we mean by spending energy can give us energy. That when the energy starts moving through us, our felt experience of energy is more vibrant, less bubble wrapped, more vibrant. And so as you think about the activities that make your heart sing, that can give you something of that feeling, that's a good thing to put into these 49 days. What we also know, and Ryan Roshi mentioned my own background in Aikido, and I know many of you also do Aikido or have some martial arts in your background. Aikido, which translates as harmonizing, the way of harmonizing energy. So it's all about how we use our human energy, this idea of ki in Japanese or chi in Chinese. What we know is that when you direct your energy toward what you want, right, your whole beingness aligns toward those directions. So that sense of intention becomes very clear, very important in how our energy flows and how the flow of our energy is directed. At the same time, we don't want to get too stuck on outcomes because we don't always control those. We can control our intention. We don't always get to control our outcomes. So the phrase we have in Zen, and I think it's such a beautiful phrase for leadership, we use it all the time, is the mind of intention without a dwelling place. Know what you're trying to do, but don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. Especially don't get stuck on appearances. We're a lot more than appearances. And that is really what Zen training invites us into, is a deeper penetration of life beyond the conventional. let me give you just one more little image of time, because I made some really high-tech pictures for you, so I want to share them with you. I mean, these are really sophisticated. And then we're going to open it up for your questions and discussion. So I'm going to share my screen, and I know you're going to be impressed. All right. So let's see. Okay, so here is an image, a noisy signal that might go along with a mind that says, I have so much to do, right? Can you feel your mind sometimes looking like this, right? Or everything's moving so quickly. This is our ordinary view of time. An ordinary view of time where we're looking at it. Here we're looking at it with our memory and our imagination, and we're seeing, I have so much to do. Can you with me? There's just so much going on. But if we were to start time slicing that, in other words, take a more and more penetrating look at now, something starts to change, because when we look at it from just a tiny little time slice of now, there's only one thing going on. I have one thing to do. There's one moment, one thing. Can you feel that? You know, when we start narrowing down to go, poof, now we can penetrate with our full heart, hara, intention aligned. Another way we can think about this is if our usual point of view is to sort of look at our day, like we look at our calendars on our phones or our computers, or we look at a noisy week and we go, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. Another way to look at it is to imagine you could actually sight along time itself. In other words, you become time, which is actually a much more realistic understanding of who you are. So what would the view look like if you were looking like this? What would it look like if you were looking down the line? It would look like this. In other words, constant changing in now. Constant changing in now. Now this, now this, now this, now this, now this, now this, now this. So these frames on time, we say in Zen, cut the before, cut the after, set the present moment free. Cut the before, cut the after, set the present moment free. Now, 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 now. And in fact, this is even how we do our chanting. You know, if you heard our chanting at all, we call Okyo, and you'll have opportunities, of course, during these 49 days to take part in that. You'll notice it doesn't sound like Gregorian chant. It doesn't sound like indigenous prayer. It doesn't sound like gospel singing. It doesn't sound like anything you've ever heard before. Well, I don't know everything you've heard, but it doesn't sound like anything I'd heard before. It sounds like relentless. Ba, 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 ba. What it is now, 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 musamanda moto nano harachi koto shaso no nanto jito. And that, so we're training ourselves to penetrate every now, moment, 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 with clear vibration through our entire body. Like, what a powerful practice that is. Talk about getting rid of the bubble wrap, you know, that's what it's doing. That's what it's doing. So I think I've talked enough. What I would do is let's hear what questions come up for you as you enter this 49-day of practice. What are you curious about? Anything you'd like to ask about? And you can just come off mute and ask your question. And you're really touching on some crucial points, because you think about time management techniques, which were all the rage in the 1980s. I mean, right? You know, but it's all about control. It's all about, how do I control my calendar? How do I control my schedule? You know, and what is control about? It's about reducing our anxiety of the uncertain. And so you're right that there's a crucial connection with acceptance, or I want to even use the word trust or confidence, that if we feel apart from life, We often try to control it through the mechanism of time. I manage my time carefully. If we feel one with life, we take it as it comes. Adventure here, adventure there, adventure here. Now, I'm not speaking glibly, because feeling one with life is not just like a make-believe or an affirmation I put in my wall. It's deep physical training. That's what we're doing in Zen. We're training ourselves to have the felt experience of one witness, connectedness, so that we have the confidence to trust life, that we don't feel we need to wrench control back to conventional means that always fall short. They're good up to a point, but at some point, not so good, right? So that this sense of how we can trust life, we trust life when we see the results that we can trust life. And we see those results when we're able to move in harmony with life. It's like when you're dancing to the tune of the music, you know it. You can feel that, right? You feel it in your body, you can feel it. So it's easier to trust that I don't have to control this song when I can just feel the rhythm. Yeah, it's a great question. Oh, you're right. We can time slice very quickly between spinning this plate, spinning that plate, spinning this plate, spinning that plate. So we have the illusion or the felt sense of doing two things at once. But we are going pa 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 pa. And to your point about the neurology, the studies I've seen have shown that we lose energy in the transitions, and the amount we lose changes for different people. Some people are very good at making transitions, and some people are lousy at it. In fact, ADHD is diagnosed as being a difficulty in making transitions in attention. So we run a spectrum of how easily it is for us to shift from this to this to this to this. Know yourself, know your own tendencies in this, but don't ever think it's free. When you shift energy, there'll be something lost to entropy. Second law of thermodynamics. Yeah, Chris Johnson, I want to call you out for just a moment, because Chris has written a wonderful book on leadership pause, on the importance of pausing and working with time around that, on how it can be important to leaders. What do you tell leaders about multitasking? Anything you'd share?
Depends on who I'm talking to, but usually I say it's going to cost you, and it's a stupid choice, and we all do it, and it's a tendency that our culture supports, and so we can go against. It's going against the grain to try to work and flow with time. So if they struggle, it makes sense, because we struggle.
Yeah, there is a cultural reinforcement of it, and I think we start to see that cultural reinforcement more clearly when we see the our own habituation, and again, one of the things I love about the stillness of Zen is that you can see things more clearly. That you can start to see, oh yeah, I've been rewarded my whole life from cramming a lot of things into small units of time. Yeah, but that's not how I want to live. You start to see that, rather than before you just were that. You didn't see it, you just were that. So the stillness of Zen gives us perspective. Yeah, what a wonderful inquiry to keep exploring. What might it look like? Because as you're pointing out, our economic systems are tightly tied into this cultural conditioning. Our medical system is based on patients per unit time, and how quickly you can see people, right? We pay people by time, by the hour, and we measure productivity by time, So we have a lot of cultural conditioning and reinforcement around certain patterns of using time. What might it look like if we started unwinding some of this? We are at a transition point. We all are at a transition point in human history where the systems that have gotten us here are not sustainable. There is no question about that. The question is what will replace them? And it'll come out of inquiries like Bethany's asking. I wonder what it would look like. if we did it a little differently? What if we actually valued, love, happiness, health, healthy ecosystems, clean air, clean water? What if we valued those things instead of productivity per unit time? Asking and feeling into those questions and bringing our behaviors in line with the heartfelt values, see what we can create. Catherine, you had a question. The answers are not as satisfying as I would like them to be, because I have a habit around wanting to fix things. So I, maybe like you, would like to get to root causes and fix them, fix it once and for all. That's often not possible, because these conditions have existed and have, I'll call it deep conditioning that go back centuries. So in a lot of ways, they're not going to, that cultural poverty is and institutionalized racism and all those things, they don't change overnight. They take, as Menachem would say, generations to change. And yet, in any moment, what we can cure is the aloneness. In any moment, we can cure the aloneness. We may not be able to cure the full illness, but we can help people not feel alone in it. That's where the empathy comes in, the one withness. Compassion literally means one with. It's not a soft, mushy feeling. It's climbing into the hole with people, as Brene Brown would call it. It's climbing into the hole with people and holding that suffering with them. And what we know, I'm going to go back to Joshua's reference to neurology. What we know is that if somebody's a little anxious, as soon as somebody shows up, even if that person can't help them, the anxious person instantly feels better. Their nervous system settles down because we co-regulate with other human beings. So we can always be a human being that helps others co-regulate with a more centered, stable place. And when we're centered, when we're connected, they may get a feeling of connectedness themselves that helps them be in that, in a more connected, or at least collective way. It's not as satisfying an answer as a utopic vision of the kind of societies we might want to build, but it's what we can do in every moment. I mean, time is our convention for talking about change. So, and it is our own mind that is perceiving change, because we have memory and imagination. So we see patterns, right? And so our own mind is coming up with the idea that I need a way to describe this. And so, time becomes the denominator, to do something that changes at a certain rate. You need time in the denominator. We used to think, and to go back to this Newtonian versus Einsteinian time, we used to think back in Newton's day that time was some fixed thing in the substrate of the universe. It was an essential building block of the universe, we'll call it. And that time was linear and in chunks, and we could measure those chunks, and we had conventions around that, seconds, minutes, days, weeks, months, years, so on. When Einstein came along, by that time, his consciousness, and he was a genius, that helped. So his consciousness was at a stage where he could see it rather than just be it. And what he could see is that time is within a frame of reference. It is a convention within a frame of reference. And that we have a frame of reference that we as human beings are birthed through, that gives us a sense of time is fixed, but it's not fixed. It's just, it's a way that we describe change. And he could actually show and posit its relationship to the speed of light and things like that. So he could take this concept that we used to think of as an absolute in the old days and show us as relative. This is a convention. It's a useful convention, but it's a convention. So what do we make of time? Our own human experience, in a sense, creates time because of perceiving change and the fact that not everything changes at the same rate. If things didn't change, we wouldn't have time. But of course, everything changes because everything's in relationship with everything else. So there's always movement. Waves come together, something's going to happen. the yin, the yang, right? As soon as there's two, there's interaction. As soon as there's subject object, there's interaction. As soon as there's anything, there's interaction. So there's always change. But our perception of it, our measurement of it, our talking about it, our management of it, all of that comes from us. Giving us new perceptions. The internet, in a sense, has wired the planet up as a kind of brain, and technology has sped things up. So we have an experience of more things happening per unit time. I mean, I'll just ask you this example. 10 years ago, how many emails did you get? 20 years ago, how many emails did you get? 30 years ago, how many emails? You didn't get email 30 years ago, right? That was a trick question. But, what started out as a little trickle of a stream has become a deluge. And now it's not just email, it's chat channels and WhatsApp and all, how many messages do you get electronically each day? And then, of course, with technology and AI speeding things up, a lot of what humans have tried to do in this transition is we speed up. We talk faster than we used to. We arm ourselves with technology. So in the middle of a conversation, we're checking a Google search thing. What is that anyway? And then we have the answer, right. We're doing these productivity enhancements. Just as a matter of course, and so technology is speeding us up. All that said, we also are getting a sense of time. There's a new consciousness that has emerged in time in the last, I'd say, 100 years. It's post-Einstein, and that's coming from quantum physics, where we're starting to see some things that happen beyond time, like quantum entanglement, where two things that are separated by space change at identically the same time. There's no communication between them because they're one thing, and so they're changing same time. This sense of quantum entanglement. So we're starting to get a sense that, some things transcend time. And so our technologies are helping to get us to a consciousness where we're getting yet a new view of time. And yet it's, so to your point, we're always in the present. The question is, if we're not actually in the present, if it is hard to be in the present, where the heck are we? So ask yourself that question. If you're not here now, where are you? What's the alternative to being here now? I'm in my imagination. I'm in my memory. And that part of my thinking process will operate on habitual loops. That's the way it works. So it'll operate with my habitual reactions to time. It'll operate out of my habitual fears. It'll operate out of my habitual self-set limits. It'll my usual story. If I'm here with you, something new and creative can happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. If you're here with the person, with the condition, the now of this moment, you can penetrate it with creativity. And I love this line from Tanoi Roshi years ago. It has really stayed with me. Creativity is stronger than karma. Karma is action that has accumulated from the past, that's stored in us. And it's real. I mean, it's real, not absolute real, but it's real in the sense of it is stored and it does have an effect and it will surface again. But creativity is stronger than karma. So if we can penetrate the moment with our full presence, we can bring about new things that are surprising, that aren't totally conditioned by the past. What an idea that is, So but great to see that. Great to see I've set up for myself an insoluble equation, And so part of when we can see something, we can start to let go of something. We can start to work through something. We can start to examine well, I guess that's a part of me, but it doesn't have to get all of me. I mean, in other words, it's something we can start to work with. When we don't see it, it's just functioning. But when we see it, we name it, we call it out, and we say, it's ridiculous. This is an impossible equation. We're onto something. We've got a handle on it now. And we can start to see how to work with this more skillfully, because this, everything in you, every quirk and turn and pocket in the bubble wrap and piece of trauma and conditioning got there for a reason. You're not a bad person. You're not a screw up. You didn't make a big mistake. It got there for a reason. And when you can start to see what's going on, you can start to make different choices with it. Creativity is stronger than karma. Well, I want you to answer that in your own experience. Answer that in your own experience. Yeah, time disappears and then it comes back when you come out of samadhi. But don't take my word for it or Paul's word for it. Have your own experience. That's what Zazen invites us into. That we stop. And in that stopping, the mind can settle down. And that's it. That's why Ryan Roshi was cautioning us to be still on a screen. So we help one another's minds settle down too. But we're as still as possible, and we don't move in Zazen. We take away movement. So all the fidgety stuff that the body's used to doing, take away that habit. Now something new has to happen. And we just let the breath drop right through the body down into the earth. So we're not bubble wrap. We are a breath stream. That breath dropping down into the earth. So every breath is like that. You do that every day, it's going to change your body, right? So you're setting up the condition for the samadhi to occur. The samadhi changes that relationship to time, as Paul is pointing out. The physical practice, the other thing you do with some intentionality, it was ideally something that you love that brings joy, makes your heart sing, with what Scobie Roshi said. It's some way to reclaim some part of your schedule rather than that sense of the day getting away from us all the time. Some part that is yours to play with, to practice in, rather than being cast about by the waves of things. So I don't see John Fry back yet. And I pair your observations with what Dennis said earlier, that when we're in a highly techno-driven culture, we get a sense of things speeding up even more. You go out and you feel nature's rhythms. In a rural setting, you just feel nature's rhythms. That's a very different vibration, meaning change through time. That's what vibration is. It's a much slower, sense. You hear the waves crash. Where I feel the part of nature that first called me home was Lake Superior, and just listening to the waves crash on Lake Superior, I could feel that rhythm through every cell of my body. That's very different sense of time than honk, 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 right? So I would encourage you, those of you in an urban setting, see if there might be something in these 49 days that get you into a different rhythm. Is there a place with a different vibration you could get to? That might be a way to use this time, because as Ru's pointing out, it's a very different experience. And in places that are very close to nature, I mean, thinking about the indigenous wisdom you shared with us, this sense of time as an infinite reservoir. You could say from birth to death, nothing, life is nothing but this flow of energy, or in now, from birth to death, this is your time, this is it. Then you can mine this as much as you want. What I find myself is that if I start to feel out of time, I have to focus more. I have to spread out a tinier interval of time. I don't know how to say that well, but I have to penetrate. That's what I find I have to do. I have to go right into the center of it, because as soon as you go to the center of it, it's still. But if you're doing that, it's too busy. So go right to this heart of it to find the stillness. Where do you learn how to do that? On the cushion. On the cushion. Yeah, so maybe you could play with a practice that helps you actually feel a different rhythm. Rhythm is another use of time. There are fast and slow rhythms. And if your usual rhythm is bop, 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 maybe you could find a practice that makes you go and just see how that rhythm feels in your body. Play with this time. Experiment with this time. So let me pose a few questions to you. And for these, I invite you to write in the chat. So get your chat fingers ready. Get your chat fingers ready, because I'm going to ask you a few questions. And I would just invite you to feel the question in you and write what comes up for you. Are you ready? Are you ready? So my first question to you is, what would you like out of this time, this 49 days? If it could do something for you, what would it be? Just feel that question and write your answer in the chat. Yeah, deeper penetration. So time and space, yeah, be absolutely present. So that deeper penetration, being intentional with time, yeah, making this, choose my adventures. I love that. I want you to choose your adventures too, Sarah. More integrated. And that's where we can feel that flow of energy when the body gets a little more integrated. Oh, now I have energy for what I want to do. Different rhythms of time, great. Acceptance in the flow of time. That acceptance, as we know, we teach this in Zen leadership all the time, is that inflection point between when I'm resisting things like, it's getting away from me, and when I'm embracing and able to work with it. And I'm able to embrace and work with it. Somebody once said to me in the context of the Zen dojo, I was commenting about the Zen. I said, oh, you have so many rules. I don't know if I'm going to get this all right. I'm going to screw up left and right. And they said, Ginny, you can do whatever you want as long as you accept the consequences. I said, I think I like that. So I'm going to say the same thing to you. You can do whatever the hell you want as long as you accept the consequences. But if you are fully heart in, how bad can it be? If you are fully present, how bad can it be? If you screw up, you fix it. That's all. It's like not complicated. How am I thinking is time? Yeah. And so play with it. Play with it. Okay. Here's your second question. Wait, here's your second question. Are you ready? Here we go. What are some things you will tell yourself when you don't make time for Zazen or this heart singing activity you want to do? What are some things you are going to tell yourself when you don't make time for this? What's going to come up? You know how your brain works. What's that brain going to tell you when you don't make time for Zazen or this heart singing activity? What would you say? What are you going to say to yourself? What's your head going to tell you? You can do anything but one of the consequences. Oh, I messed up. When do you spend your time? Lack of sleep, being a slut. I have time tomorrow. Next time, right? Okay, those are. What are they going to tell you? Some of you are already going to what you're going to tell back. What's the first voice? I'm going to ask you about the second voice in a moment. What's the first voice? Right, comfort clinging. Yeah, we like our comfort. We like our comfort. And there is, and unfortunately, comfort becomes a zone that gets smaller as we get older. It's because a comfort zone becomes like prison cell. It has a sneaky way about it. But when we keep blasting it out, then we get that flow of energy. When you think about comfort tends to stay contained. Great. We say, okay, so those are the things we tell ourselves. I'm not such a disciplined person. Now, when that happens, when that little voice comes up saying, I can't do this, what will you want to remember? What will you want to remember? When that little voice comes up saying, you're not such a disciplined person. Oh, come on, you'd stay in bed this morning. What will you want to remember? Yeah, breath. And I love Dennis also says breath too. Remember your bigness too, and the breath that flows through. What will you want to remember? Now, cut the before and after. Set the present free. Yeah. Yeah, great. What will you want to remember? Accept me. Love yourself like you love others. Absolutely. There's love in this. There is love in this. Feel nature's love. Love it back. Yeah. Never mind the bullocks. No time like the present. Oh, I like that one. I think I'm going to borrow that. Remember who you are. And it does, as Chris is pointing us toward, come to a remembering who we are. Remember who we are. We are a very particular body, a differentiated antenna that has resonance with the whole universe and can conduct it a certain way into actions that we call our life's purpose. And we're also the whole picture. The more we have that experience, that connectedness, that samadhi, that bigness, the more we trust life, the more confidence we can have. Oh, which wolf am I feeding? I love that, Marsha. The more confidence we can have, and the less we try to control. Yeah. So we are at the bottom of the hour, and I am so grateful for your questions and your answers. Slow down, come back again. Yeah, that's what we do on the cushion too. We often would say count our breath from 1 to 10, but sometimes we don't make it to 10. And what do? Back to 1. You know, that's all you can do. Go back to 1. So in this 49-day period, I wish you the very things you hope for from the experience. And also, when the voice of resistance comes up, I wish you the bigness, the wisdom, and hey, we're doing this together. The connectedness that reminds you you're not in this alone. And let's see what we can make of this time.